We gotta take the good with the bad. This time on Scrolling Down the Belt, no future. Okay, fine. Some future. But the two games we're covering this time around are very unlikely to appear on anyone's top 10 beat-em-ups list. First off is Tecmo Knight, which has the much better name of Wild Fang in Japan. Both this and our next game have very vague release dates of sometime in 1989. We're entering an era where beat-em-ups will start becoming more prolific, and release dates, particularly for arcade games, will start to get a lot more muddled. This is why I say that Scrolling Down the Belt is a series that delves into beat-em-ups, brawlers, and belt-scrolling action games in mostly chronological order. If this gory and off-kilter aesthetic seems familiar to you in any way, look no further than the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden, also by Tecmo. The director for both of these titles was Strong Shima, or H. Ijima. And boy does it show! In fact, it makes you wonder if Ijima wasn't holding back some of his desire for more grotesque action during Ninja Gaiden. Here in Tecmo Knight, the enemies bear bloody gashes once they've been hit a couple of times, and basically just explode in gore when they've been defeated. But the big link between these two titles is the game over screen. We discussed Ninja Gaiden's scarring implementation of this back in that video, but Tecmo Knight's is very similar in that it shows our hero about ready to be devoured by the maw of some giant monster if you don't hurry up and insert another coin already. It's not nearly as impactful to me personally since I didn't actually see a Tecmo Knight machine anywhere growing up, but the local 7-Eleven could have spun it. No, that's not blood that sprays out of them, it's cherry Slurpee. But it also didn't feature any ninjas, so late 80s America probably wanted nothing to do with it. The good news is that it plays a bit less fiddly than Ninja Gaiden did. We have an attack button, a jump button, and a change button. The change button will trigger our hero, no, not the big guy, the little guy, to swap between two different assisting forms. This giant man, aka Smoke Man, and a tiger, though a dragon will also become an option when you collect that specific temporary power-up drop. Smoke Man has a lot less range than the tiger does, but does quite a bit more damage. Naturally, each is useful in different situations. You can also do this change a limited amount of times based on this meter, and the ability is taken away when you're low on health. If you jump and attack an enemy in the air, you'll perform an access attack, which is this grab if you're lined up correctly. These can also be chained, which is a good way to take out some of the bosses, though it requires knowing the exact setup to pull it off. The story on the US Arcade Flyer is incredibly simple. Tecmo Knight is a brave ancient warrior who has come to do battle with a diabolical beast known as Wild Fang. That's kinda it. But the story in the Japanese version is much more fleshed out. Thousands of years ago, there was a peaceful kingdom called Valdek. One day, the kingdom's strongest swordsmen, Duke and Fleet, set out on a journey at the king's command, leaving the castle. That very night, the Beast Demon army, which they had once supposedly vanquished, attacked the kingdom. In a night of slaughter and destruction, the castle was overrun and seized. The army's counterattack was futile, and all of the people in the castle and town were imprisoned. The goal of the Beast Demon army was to resurrect the great beast demon Deglomes through the mass sacrifice of human blood. Upon hearing the news, Duke and Fleet rushed back to the kingdom. Seeing the devastation, they were shocked, saddened, and that sorrow soon ignited into a blazing fury, calling on the kingdom's three protective deities, the Smoke Man, the Tiger, and the Dragon, to assist them, merging with their bodies, the Wild Fangs. If that's not a heavy metal concept album, I don't know what is. But Tecmo Knight's biggest problem is its difficulty, much like the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden. Enemy AI can be very aggressive, so you really have to learn the game in a particular way to be successful without credit feeding. And perhaps the best example of this is the strategy for the last boss, which I couldn't even fully nail down. The idea is that you bait out these attacks after getting a single hit in or so with the tiger's longer range weapon, and retreat back to the edge of the screen where you'll be safe from attack. But it all just needs to be done in such a narrow window of time. It's a very interesting game aesthetically, but there's just not enough going on to make it worth the difficulty, at least to me. And not to mention, there's even more interesting beat-em-ups that involve transforming into animals. No future! Game Machine magazine published this as 6th place in their Best Hit Games 25 list in the August 1st, 1989 issue. It was bested by 2 other beat-em-ups, Konami's Crime Fighters and SNK's Gang Wars, both of which we'll be taking a look at in near future videos. Just cutting in real quick to say that my book, Gameplay Harmonies, Japanese Recording Artists and the Video Games About Them, is on sale right now at limited run. If you like obscure retro games and or Japanese music and want to see how they intersect, this is for you. It's about video games that actually starred Japanese recording artists, not just featured their music. It goes all the way from the Nintendo Famicom to the Sony PlayStation 2 and spans genres from platformers to edutainment. It's also full of titles that never left Japan. I did an intro video to it on this channel, and the link to buy the book and watch that video will be in the description. Okay, bye-bye, back to the video. Next up is Tough Turf. And no, this has nothing to do with the 1985 film Tough Turf starring James Spader, Kim Richards, and Robert Downey Jr. This game also has a vague 1989 release date, though sources seem to point to it being earlier in the year. Tough Turf was developed by both Sega and Sunsoft, published by Sega in Japan, but by Sunsoft in North America. Who did what work? How is it split up? The answer to both of these questions is sadly, we just don't know. That information just doesn't seem to be out there. But what we do know is that Tough Turf is a very simple game without too many gimmicks. 1 button punches, 1 kicks, and 1 jumps. If you hit the jump and kick button without holding a direction, you'll actually do a neutral jump kick, something unfortunately not found in many beat-em-ups. It's also very good for getting knockdowns on enemies. Punch and kick together will crouch to pick up items such as bats and pipes, and boy is that a key mechanic. You might even say it's the only mechanic, because this is basically pick up a pipe and hit people with it the game. Any 1 credit clear playthrough you see of Tough Turf will feature someone doing that and only that. Though I'm not even really sure that learning a 1 credit clear for this is even worth it. You see, Tough Turf is also a very finicky game, but in a much different way than Tecmo Knight was. Coming at enemies from off-axis versus head-on is extremely necessary here, at least when it comes to these big boys. And even then, it's incredibly iffy. You'll be constantly punished, even when you think you're doing it right. And I just couldn't really get the hang of the spacing. Your pipe won't reach, but somehow theirs always seem to. Tough Turf also has a horrible system of using a mixed amount of health that depletes whenever you get hit, but there are no lives to accompany this. Once this runs out, that's it, it's game over. You don't even get the opportunity to continue. And though clearing a level replenishes 2 bars, this means that taking any significant amount of damage in a given level can be hugely detrimental to a clear. Things aren't all bad though. The voice samples are very amusing and give the game some much needed character. And a huge amount of credit needs to be given to composer Shinichi Seiya for the real banger of a soundtrack that Tough Turf has. Way better than it deserves. Seiya also went on to do sound for many of Sunsoft's home console titles that are best known for their soundtracks. Story-wise, I'm not even sure what's going on here. The main characters look to be businessmen that are just looking to get into it with gangs. The Lee brothers from Double Dragon, after they've retired from teaching martial arts, gotten office jobs and started missing fighting on the streets after a few years maybe? The last boss is interesting, but honestly, I didn't even have the wherewithal to make it there on my own. I'm borrowing some footage from noted Tough Turf expert and generally awesome streamer Lord BBH to showcase this. At least Tough Turf was subversive with its ending? That's about all I can give it though. Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but I feel like Tough Turf is the most rotten game we've seen on Scrolling Down the Belt so far. Even if it didn't have the gameplay problems that it does, it would suffer from just being too dull. It doesn't really feel like something that Sunsoft, or certainly not Sega, should have produced. It's no wonder it never got a home port. As far as I can tell, this did not appear on any top list for arcade games because why would it have? No future! Next time on Scrolling Down the Belt, Kunio, Alex. Kunio, Alex.